number 50 of this series where I'm programming an NES game live on Twitch. Let's get started. I'm going to try and keep this one relatively short, for me at least. I feel like every time I say that it ends up being a longer stream, but I do want to keep this one as short as I can. I was up really late working on finishing up the Zero Pages episode 2. If you haven't seen that on YouTube, you can check out my channel here. And I just posted episode 2 of the Zero Pages, which is a 9-minute, 15-second video on number systems. So it covers the basics of hex and decimal and binary and how number systems work. It's pretty short and compact, but hopefully it gets the point across. And if you have any questions about that kind of thing, let me know. But I was excited to get that posted, and episode 3 will be on essentially programming, kind of covering the logistics of what programming is, and then talking about assembly language and some of the basic concepts of assembly, and then moving on to more complex assembly language concepts, and then I'll start covering specific topics for NES programming. So it should be hopefully useful. It seems like people really like the Zero Page streams. They seem to enjoy that it is not nearly as long as my other content, which I understand. Those videos do tend to go long, but we're really digging into the details of the game, how it works, and trying to get all that put together. So last time we had worked on getting collision working with the background, so when the ship collides it disappears. And if you remember from last time, if I full screen this, it's hard to see. Let me back up here. Oops. There's this pixel here. That's the top left corner of the ship. And so you can see we have that little overlap there where the ship is not colliding with this boundary here. Now technically there are two problems. One is that the way that the tile map, or the meta tile I should say, is configured, the collision is not configured for this tile. Or it is, but it's, or sorry, so it's configured for the part that we're, yeah, so it's not actually configured for the part we're flying over, which is this part. And that's because you can see there's a pretty big overlap. So this is something that obviously we're gonna have to work with, that limitation of being bounded to these 8x8 tiles, but it's no different than any sort of grid-based system for drawing backgrounds and doing collision detection. And so what we will need to do is just try and make our artwork kind of line up to that as best as possible, so that we have fewer false collisions. Because on the one hand, we could put the collision here, but then if we back it up here for a second, this might take a while because it was paused. So here, so if I can get the collision to happen the right way, or get the overlap to happen in the right way, I should say. having far too much fun rewinding and yeah. Oop. So, still not right. There. Oh, damn it. Anyway, I'm gonna stop futzing with it. You can see that the wing would overlap with this empty space and cause the ship to crash, even though there's nothing technically here. By the same token, right now there's no collision point on these wings, and so if they hit the collision point after we pass it, there's no collision. It's only that top left corner that is actually colliding with the tiles. So it's obviously a little bit wonky still, but we can fix that. And so what I'd like to do today, I think, is make it so that the player sprite actually has some of the information about the collision point on it. I'm not 100% sure if that's what I want to do. I mean, there's obviously still a ton of stuff we can do with the collision as is without going in and messing with the asset tool. I'm always kind of hesitant to do stuff with the asset tool, only because it's not in assembly. It's C, and so it's not really NES programming per se, even though it's relevant to what we're doing because we're using it for NES programming. So I don't know. I think that's probably what I'll do. I think I'll probably make it so we can place points on here. Right now, you can also see we have these resize handles that are supposed to be for collision for the sprite. I believe the data structure supports multiple collision bounding boxes. It does. But right now, the only one we're writing out is the full size of the sprite. I think what we'll do so let's add to this unsigned short number of collision points. What don't you like about that? Nothing, you're just being dumb in IntelliSense? Okay. Alright, so so let's see. We need to, guess we need to toggle some sort of mode to draw the collision points. Let's see. make it switch back and forth. You'll say something like if you turn on, if you have view collision points turned on, it will switch to hide collision points. So if not viewing collisions, yeah. Let's see, we gotta add that. So if we're not viewing the collisions, and the button is pressed, otherwise so this should toggle the buttons. Oh, well, not exactly. For those of you who didn't see, on one of the recordings, there we go. Sour, who's the developer on Messin, he commented, letting me know that he saw the problems with the installation that we were having the other night when we were coding, and commented that it, might be the Windows UAC causing the problems for the installations, and then commented that it also fixed a couple of the bugs that I was experiencing while I was working on it, and said to open issues on GitHub. It was just kind of cool to see that he's so active watching what's going on, and it shows in the emulator. All right, so we need to, I guess I want to draw we have the ability to render a rectangle. I'm wondering if we want to draw that collision point as a circle. So I'm just going to steal the code from this. We don't need the text or the transparency or the color. That's important anymore, and that's not important anymore, and this is render circle. You're about to hear the dog bark. It's forewarning. Void render circle, control node. I think there's a, oh, is there no circle? No, really? I'm gonna have to write my own. I really don't want to do that. I don't really want to draw a circle. Alright, I'm gonna just make a rectangle for now, and it's not worth spending time on this right now. Node width, node height, white, height. Okay. Let's see. So I want to make that 16. This doesn't need to change. With right. Oh, maybe it does. No. And we may want to do a hover on it. Where's button height? Oh, it's just am I using it again? Oh. So what I need to do is I need to go through the current sprite number of collision points and current sprite. Alright, so we never actually defined the pointer for the collision points, so let's do that. What is that? Bounding box size. Is it because bounding box size is a bounding box is 2 points? I guess so. Yeah, so if okay, so we've got our vector2 that we're setting up, we're mem setting it, and then we're reading collision points size, and then we set that. Oops. Okay. Okay. Just make sure this doesn't crash now. That's weird. That shouldn't have affected anything because I added that to the end. Alright, let's recreate that. So create sprite, go there, oh, save, view collision points. Okay, it doesn't crash, good. Alright, so now if sprite select, this is if meta tile selected only. Otherwise, actually, this can stay. But this, else if sprite selected, let's see if it does what we expect it to here. Actually, it's not just if a sprite is selected, it's if we're viewing collisions also. So there's the sprite, toggle viewing collisions, and click. No? No? GUI image ID, if image selected or meta tile selected or sprite selected. Alright. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm filtering out or sprite selected. I'm filtering out just raw images because we don't want those to trigger the click. So let's see. So now we get our clicks, but we shouldn't see anything print until collision is turned on, and it is. Okay, cool. So let's see. Actually, you know what we want to do? We don't want to divide by, we don't want to shift like this here because that's fine for when we want to convert it to a grid, but all we want to do is convert it back to what it was beforehand, before we scaled it. So let's just scale it back down because we need it to be granular in terms of where you're clicking. Cool. And so the sprite is 16 by 16, and we're getting our expected range from the clicks. Okay. So now let's have it add a collision to the list. Current selected sprite. Current sprite. What did I call it? Yeah, current sprite. Number of collisions. Plus plus. Well, not yet. Current sprite collision points is equal to null. Then we want to allocate some space for some collisions equals vector2 malloc size of vector2 times, forget, what did we do for bounding boxes? I guess we only allocate the one because we only have one bounding box. let's just hard code this right now. To do. This shouldn't be hard coded. 216. All right, number of collision points 1. Current sprite 0. X is equal to that and that. Okay, cool. So it did actually do what I expected, but it was not offset by the appropriate offset, which is fine. Why is the offset wrong, though? Render label, it should be, oh, I guess it's relative, it's, why is it not relative to the parent? Oh, you know what? It's because I'm not telling it to render in the context of a parent. So how would I do that here? Because it's not. How is this doing this properly then? Render bounding box. Oh, because it's getting. So technically this isn't even right per se. I mean, it's visually it looks right, but it's doing some trickery to make it render it properly. Do I want to do the same thing, or do I want to just, do I want to fix it? I feel like I should fix it. So let's introduce the ability to put something into a context. GUI. It's a frame begin. It's a context begin, and it should just take the ID of the thing that you want it to be in. Turn that off. So how would that work? Well, the good thing is we should be able to use the find set active to find the thing with the ID that we're looking for. And then push the context and it would just be that. Let's make sure that the node isn't null. Let me pop that context. I think that should be it. I think we did all the hard work when we wrote the search to do find set active. So that's our call to, you can even put this in braces just to kind of differentiate it visually. Functionally, it doesn't do anything. So let's see if that makes it render it properly. No. Why? So it adds the collision point, and then we have our circle. So what is the current context? Looks like that's the background context. So let's see, ID is, well, that's, why, is that right? Okay. What is the width and the height? 250. I mean, that seems right. What type is it? It's an image, so that looks correct. So what is its context? Its layer is, that's the background. Control type label. Oh, well, that doesn't help. Not that that's the problem, but it's certainly not right. Add common node. Okay, so let's try that again. Sprite, view collisions, click. Okay, so we don't need that breakpoint anymore. So it didn't find it. So now we have our render circle, and it is a type circle. Add, this is the current context. Am I just not doing this right with the layer situation? Node layer, label, node renderer. I thought the whole point of okay, so the issue I think is with the render call, because it's using the absolute X and Y position and not using the offset based on the parent. And we had done something like this with the window, I believe, where, well, that's this. There was something that I had changed to actually render properly based on a pushed context with relative coordinates. I can't remember what that was because that was a while ago. Let's see. Maybe it was the frame or the list. List item. So I had set a parent control in the list, and the list items are now rendering relative to the parent control. But I don't think that's what it was that I had changed, because I thought I had changed a control so that when you added another item, that it was using the context to determine what the offset was. Let's look at these render calls, because I really don't remember. How is it only finding? I'm not even in the right file. How did that happen? Render background, render button. That's anchoring. So with the list, I remember that was rendering into its own layer before it rendered the entire thing. Render rectangle. Palette view. Window. Well, let's figure out how this should be working then. So, the context is just a node, and basically what I guess we would want to do for the circle here is we would say The only question is, I don't remember if it... does it put the context? Does it change the context? So this is where it's looping through all the children and calling the render functions to render down everything. So current context layer is context temp. So maybe what we can do is not, you know what? I'm pretty sure this will work, so I don't want to just put it anywhere. Basically what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, there's going to be, while it's doing the rendering, there is a render context that is currently active. It's not multi-threaded, so we don't have to worry about any sort of issues where multiple parts of the screen are updating the context in any way. Why is this in a temporary? Is this because of something that we're freeing? Who knows? Current that's weird. I guess I'm not using that anymore. I must have been using that for something and never got rid of it. I also saw that in the code for circle I was declaring these and I don't need them. So let's see if that works now. We'll have to go back and clean up some of this stuff because as we're progressing and adding new capabilities, it's making things a little bit messy and inconsistent. So render context, width and height. That's the background still. Why is that the... Oh. Well, because if you didn't set the render context and then you call render, it's going to have the old context, isn't it? Alright, so let's try that again. It's still wrong. Is the render context not have the right position now? It's possible. Render context. But still wrong. What? Oh. Interesting. So why is that not a child? Of the context that we wanted it to be a child of. So we had done the begin context to push the... It is. So we had pushed, what we had done was we had said, okay, make the make the circle, which is really a rectangle or a square, be in the context of the image. The idea being that we wanted it to render its value, render its position relative to the position of the sprite being drawn. Yeah, you know what? That's the context is not current context, it's node. This may mess some things up, but ultimately I think that's probably the right way to do it. Oh, come on, really? So the node is 16 by 16. Oh, damn it. You know... Okay, I know why. I gotta change this. This has got to take... Alright, yeah. So instead of passing the layer as the only context, it's really got to be the node as the context. And that's what's messing it up, is that it is not... So basically what was happening was I was setting the current context that, or the render context that it was using to the node itself, when really I want it to be the thing the node is within. And so that's why it wasn't working. And originally I only needed the layer that we were drawing onto for the context, but that's not true anymore. I need the actual context because I need to know where the context lives on the screen in order to be able to use that as my relative offset to draw this properly. So the node here should be... Why is this... So the render context is my 256 by 256. And I should fix this to take the render context as a parameter, really. But we'll get to that in a second. And then render context is... Oh, no, okay, it's right. It's just the node. I was looking at the wrong thing. Okay. So does that draw right now? Hey, okay, well, that's better. It's, okay, right. So it's correct, except that the problem is that now, because we've scaled the image... the position is wrong. Okay, that's good though. That's what we want it to be. So now we need to break everything again, because what it needs to do is it needs to take two values, and we want to fix this. So what it needs to do is it needs to take a context and node. And I'm not going to change things to use that right now. But that's ultimately the right way to do this, I think. A lot of things will take the background as the context, and that'll be sufficient. But there are going to be things that we want to use, just like this rectangle, where we want to embed it in the context of the image and have it render relative to that. And so that's where this is going to come in. like I said, this has gotten a little bit messy, but we will fix this. I may end up separating the renderer portions into separate files just to kind of keep things a little bit more separated. Render frame. Yep. Render circle. Because what I didn't like was the fact that I was using this render context variable, which was a global. If we ever decided to do anything a little bit more advanced, or potentially, I don't know, look at handling some of this in different threads, or I don't know, whatever. It's really not something that we want to make this be, you know, a global we're accessing. It's just messy. I know current context is something that we're accessing as a global, and probably we'll want to fix that, because, for example, end is taking current context as a default value for that, because the actual main asset tool doesn't know anything about current context. All right, so now what I need to do, I think instead of what I'll do is, instead of rescaling this, actually no, I'll leave that there. But what I'll do is, when we render the rectangle, I will scale the position. And eventually we'll make this actually draw a circle instead of a rectangle, but like I said, I didn't want to get into drawing the circle tonight. Not that it's hard, you can use sine and cosine to do it. It's just not necessary for what we're doing right now. All right, so now no, that's actually okay. So what I was saying was, what I was going to say is, well, we don't, you know, we're not getting the level of granularity that we want with the selection there, but that's actually not true. It's because the ship is 16 by 16, and as such the middle is actually 2. It doesn't fall on a pixel, the middle. It's you've got 2 pixels here spanning this central line, and so there's you can't just place a pixel. So it's, yes, it's shifted over from where we clicked, but that's okay. And now we got to add the code that handles, once you have a collision point already defined, we should be able to arbitrarily add as many as we want. Yep. Up to 16, otherwise it'll crash. So we could have those. And then we got to look at how well our code works, and if doing, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 collision checks is too much and will cause the system to perform poorly, or if that'll work. I don't know. We may just end up doing something like those. Excuse me. All right, let's get this saved off, and then I think I'm done for tonight. I know it's short, but it's been a long week. And spent a lot of time in meetings today, which is very draining. So this is temp collision point, size of vector 2 times sprite number of collision points. And let's see, is there anything else we want to do? Oh, right, okay. That's, I forgot. So sprite collision points equals null. Let's put a little comment here. Null out the pointers so that we don't accidentally load something in from disk that looks at an invalid address. That's why we store it off into the temp like that. Store the pointers. We're done storing the data. Okay. So we save that, and then let's see. We have the load. I'm just going to make this our arbitrary 16 value. This is arbitrary and dumb. All right, so make sure we're not leaking memory. Okay. Save that. Hey, all right, cool. So that saves our collision points, and we can come back to them anytime now. I'm thinking we probably want to change the color. Let's it's not oh, what is it? I guess it's not. And I also didn't define green. Okay, place sprite collision. Cool. We gotta rebuild these sprites. Create sprite. Oops. Guess the old sprite had a, okay. Let's see, flyby, create sprite. Okay. So the old sprites won't work properly without resaving them. Create sprite. All right, that looks there. That's good. Where's flyby? That save blaster. Forgot to save that. Any other sprites? There's the bullet. Let's create the sprite for that and save. And we have the flyby done. That's fine. Player. Okay. All right, cool. So that's looking good. Obviously, we didn't do anything with the NES side of this today, but you know, we set the stage for this. We gotta on the NES code side here, just to kind of talk about it for Monday. The plan is that right now what we're doing when we process the player is we're taking the player's world position and we're just taking it as is and using it to find out where the player is over the map. So we say, okay, the player is, you know, somewhere over here or over here. It maps it to one of these meta tiles, and then in doing so looks up the meta tile collision data and says, okay, if this is a collidable tile, then it looks at the subtiles to see if it's over the subtile that would be collidable, and if it is, it then considers the player destroyed from hitting the object that's on the map. So what we would need to do now is, instead of using the player's offset purely by itself, what we want to do is we want to take the player's offset and add the collision point to it and do that test, and then take the second collision point and the third collision point and figure out if any of those have collided with the map. And like I said before, I don't know how that's going to perform. I'm not sure what that looks like in terms of the performance we're going to see. We need to rework the way the player's motion is done here, with velocity and it being bounded by the screen to not roll over when you're flying. So what was happening a while back now was that, you know, you'd go off to the right and come back over on the left, and we had bounded that, but by switching to the world coordinates, that got broken. So we'll fix that also once we implement the multi-collision test for the player. That may be ambitious. We may not be able to do that. But I don't know. We'll see. As I've said a bunch of times, this is all a learning process for me as well. So we're kind of exploring what the NES can do. So, as always, thank you for watching the stream. As promised, this is a pretty short one for me, but hopefully it was something you enjoyed. And I'll be streaming again on Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Be sure, if you haven't already, check out the Zero Pages episode 2. Like I said in the beginning of the stream, I'm hoping to do a follow-up to that with related to programming and assembly language. I'm trying to keep them super short, but if you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Clairvis. Also, you can post a comment on this recording on YouTube. And I'm on Nintendo Age. Come say hi. I've seen a few people from the feeds, from the, I should say, the chat, here on the live stream pop in to Nintendo Age, which is cool. And I don't know who might be there, but I will be at the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo this weekend. I'll be checking that out on Saturday. So probably around noon or so, if you're there, you should definitely message me on Twitter if you're going to be there, and be fun to say hi and get some feedback in person from you. If you have any feedback about the live stream and you didn't feel like posting a comment or letting me know on Twitter, but yeah, I'll be there Saturday. So maybe I'll see someone there. But anyway, have a good night. Have a good weekend. See you Monday. And yeah, take care.